into every prison siege. But Maggie was quite keen to use the guys. Maggie was personally involved.
On the 5th day of the siege, the SAS flew to Scotland in the strictest secrecy. Had the press got hold of the story, it would have been dynamite.
We arrived at the prison early hours of Saturday morning, and were taken in the back way because the press, etc., were on the main entrance to the prison trying to get coverage. So, as far as the public were aware, it was a police operation.
Even the prison officers didn't know who the sinister new arrivals were.
Middle of one night, the prison bus appeared on the yard through the back gate, and all these strangers disembarked, wearing all manner of clothing and carrying large rucksacks.
They had no masks or anything, but balaclavas. And they all looked exactly the same.
Nothing was said. No faces was seen. It was just men in black.
If you asked their name, they were called John. Everyone was called John.
They disappeared into the gymnasium and closed the doors.
Once inside the gym, the commanding officer outlined the plan of action. Since the prisoners were unarmed, the SAS were to make a so-called hard arrest, subduing the prisoners without lethal force and using batons if necessary, not guns.
The plan was for 3 groups to do an explosive entry on the 3 floors of D Wing, and about 6 guys to walk along the parapet and go in through the roof. If we had been compromised, then actually they could have actually murdered him, because they're in there for murder anyway. They were the scum of the earth. So really they had nothing to lose.
I sat in a darkened room watching them go along this roof, and I'm praying that no hostage taker would stick his head out of the hole in the roof. Now suppose they had spotted these guys when they're 60 or 70 yards or feet or whatever away from where they were. They've got Jackie, they've got a knife at his throat. Would Jackie have lived? It's a major gamble, and I don't know how justified.
As the SAS crept along the roof, they were spotted by inmates of B Wing opposite, who immediately started shouting and banging the bars of their cells in an attempt to warn their fellow prisoners. The SAS had to abandon their softly approach and get in fast if they were going to save Jackie Stewart.
We had to go in immediately. So the squadron commander over the radio gave stand by, go, and immediately everything went into action.
They ran along the narrow, wet roof edge 80 feet up, and then threw stun grenades down into the attic through the hole in the roof, which the prisoners had made.
Every light window lit up in order, seemed to go around in a circle.
A cloud of dust appeared from the end of the D-hole, and a lot of shouting and banging.
The smoke and gas. Even where we were, you were feeling the effects of it.
It was quite frightening.
A black figure came down from the top of the roof there and disappeared inside the window. Never saw him again.
Within moments, the SAS had overpowered the 4 prisoners in the attic.
I'm sure some of the guys must have given 1 or 2 of them a bit of a clout, but nothing to write home about. The guys were walking and not actually being stretchered away.
There was flash, bang, and just chaos like this. Well, I didn't know who they were. A guy took a hold of me, and because I was in prisoner's clothes by this time, he took a hold of me, and I says, hold on. I says, I'm the officer. I had a blanket round me, like. So he says, right, come with me, and we went up through the attic onto the roof.
And then it went quiet.
It took about 5 minutes. It seemed longer, but it just took about 5 minutes.
And it was all over, basically.
Jackie had survived his ordeal with just cuts and bruises, much to everyone's relief.
Well, I saw grown men weep, tears streaming down their face. And Jackie sat in a chair and he looked at me and we smiled at each other, relief on my part. And I says, Jackie, some people will do anything for overtime.
And you were in overtime for that time.
Oh, I was in overtime. I
that.
was getting overtime all the time I was there.
It was 106 hours overtime. It seems funny now we're talking about it. It wasn't funny at the time. We've often looked back and laughed. Though it was a terrible dread.
Having spent just a few hours on Scottish soil, the unit returned to Hereford where no fuss was made. But there was a note from someone who mattered.
All we received was a message from Maggie Thatcher saying, well done boys, her boys. She called us her boys. And that's it. You know, you get on with life and away you go.
As far as I'm concerned, they were muscular social workers. Muscular social workers. And I said to one of them, I said, look, I don't know who you guys are, but I hope I never see you in my jail again. And that was all. They said nothing and I said nothing else.
The job was done, and hushed up to avoid controversy. But news of SAS exploits as urban warriors would soon spill very uncomfortably into the public arena when they engaged with a far more substantial adversary. On the 6th of March 1988, 3 IRA terrorists were shot dead by SAS soldiers in Gibraltar. The terrorists had been planning to detonate a huge car bomb outside the governor's residence during the changing of the guard ceremony. The SAS shot them down in the street, explaining that they opened fire because the terrorists had made movements which looked as if they might be reaching for concealed weapons, or be about to detonate the bomb by remote. But it emerged afterwards that the terrorists had in fact been unarmed and had not yet planted their bomb. Then, eyewitnesses described how they had seen the SAS apparently shooting their suspects in cold blood. There was a huge public outcry. For the first time, the use of such lethal force by the SAS was stridently challenged. Had terrorists been summarily executed? Was there a policy of shoot to kill? The scandal highlighted the complex moral and legal questions surrounding the use of the SAS in the troubles of Northern Ireland.
It's not possible to expect SAS soldiers to be policemen. They're SAS soldiers, that's what they've been trained for. And where we have to ask the question is whether we should be using people like the SAS, who are a heavily armed, highly trained, very, very aggressive military unit, in policing operations.
Nowhere was the role of the SAS more difficult or ambiguous than in Northern Ireland. They began their long stay there in 1976. Following a horrifying spate of sectarian killings, Prime Minister Harold Wilson had come under intense pressure to do something. Out of the blue, he announced that the regiment would be deployed in South Armagh.
I think this announcement was actually aimed at the IRA. Basically, what Wilson was saying is, right, we've had enough, we're sending in the SAS and, we're going to start killing you.
Wilson wanted the SAS for its propaganda value, but its role had not been thought through. The regiment was still essentially a kind of imperial task force, which had just spent 6 years fighting a secret war in the Arabian Gulf. Neither their fighting prowess nor their unique skills in winning people's hearts and minds would necessarily be appropriate in Northern Ireland. And no one had actually consulted the SAS about their new mission.
As I understand it, nobody at the SAS knew that they were going until it appeared on the news in the evening that Harold Wilson had decided to send them in.
There's a possibility of a secondary explosion right here.
It was the beginning of a new and darker period for the regiment, many of whom felt uncomfortable operating on UK soil.
Northern Ireland should be a job for armed police who know the law, who know how to work the law, get around all the minefield that the law is out there, and they also know all the areas.
Snapper went to Northern Ireland straight from a no-holds-barred shooting war in the Gulf state of Oman, where he staunchly defended the town of Mirbat. He was now confronted with a completely different set of rules.